Hello and welcome back to another edition of Big Red Huddle. Today is Saturday, March 2nd, 2024. On tap for you today, we are going to start with Nebraska basketball. We're about a week out here from Selection Sunday, have some really exciting results and thoughts from the last week in Nebraska basketball. We're going to be light on Nebraska football this week, just not a lot going on. We're in what I would call the dog days of the off season. A couple nuggets there that we'll hit on. Spend a little bit more time with Nebraska baseball this week. Some interesting results last weekend. Off to a quick start this weekend, so starting to get excited around Will Bolt's team. And then some interesting national storylines that have hit the news here in the last 7 days that I want to make sure we hit on. But with that, let's huddle up. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to start and be kind of heavy in Nebraska basketball here for probably the first half of the show. We have a couple data points from this last week that I want to touch on, and then spend some time looking at high level, where we're at. We're about a week, 2 weeks out from Selection Sunday, a week out from the Big Ten tournament. If we circle back to last Sunday, just another dominating performance by Fred Hoiberg and the boys at home, 73-55. If you watch this game, within the first 5-10 minutes, you could just tell that Nebraska had the higher energy. Obviously off to a bit of a slow start there, but just, relentless on the defensive side of the court. It was 28-20 at half, but again, felt really good about where things were trending just from an overall effort level perspective. Juwan Gary comes out hot in the second half, finishes with 22 points, 4 big 3-point field goals there in the second half to help the team pull away. Game was never really in doubt 2 minutes into the second half. It's becoming a broken record with this team, but it's a fun one. Just different guys are stepping up in the scoring department night in and night out. So last Sunday, we had Juwan Gary 22, Bryce Williams 15, Lawrence, who I'm really starting to get excited about, coming off of the bench with 11. 18-point victory, fourth consecutive Big Ten game with wins over 15 points. Really set this team up nicely going into Thursday's game at Ohio State. I was really excited about the opportunity. We have been on this show breaking down this last 7-game stretch since the road game at Northwestern. Really felt that going into that Ohio State game, that was the game that we could have really punched our ticket for. Unfortunately, come up short in Columbus, 78-69 there. I didn't get to watch a lot of this one. I was following along on my phone. We had some family commitments that night, but just disappointing in the fact that Ohio State's best player was announced out just before the game. Bruce Thornton out with migraines. I saw that news about 2 hours before tip. Was really excited about not only how we were playing. Obviously, Ohio State's been hot lately, but this is. I've seen some Husker fans get worked up over this loss. This is not a bad loss. This was a Q1 game, is a Q1 opportunity, if you will. Again, could have probably locked our spot up with this win, but this is not a bad loss by any means. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't change anything on the go forward. Simply put, it's a missed opportunity. And this team, and as we start to transition into kind of higher level, where this team goes from here, where we're looking at from a national perspective, this team still does not have a bad loss on the resume. And a bad loss being defined as a Q3 or a Q4. We're undefeated in those games, one of the few teams in the country that don't have a bad loss. And so as you start thinking about tournament and selection and you start comparing resumes and looking at, should this team be in, should this team be out, when you put Nebraska's resume up against others, every other team that they're going to be compared to has bad losses, at least one. And Nebraska doesn't have one of those yet. Potentially an opportunity for one coming up, but I don't expect that to happen. And so when you start to look at the resumes again, I think Nebraska's in a really good spot. And then speaking of that, we've kind of been breaking down, 3 or 4 different rankings over the last few weeks. As of Saturday morning in the net, we're still 43rd. We were 43rd last week. We ticked up to 41st, and I think maybe even hit 40th one day after the Minnesota game, after the Ohio State game lost, ticked back to 43. So really the net rankings at this point are pretty static, outside of a major win or a really disappointing loss. Nebraska doesn't have many of those opportunities or really any of those opportunities left. So we're really going to settle into that, 40 to 45 line from a net perspective, which is just fine. All of the major publications, bracketologists, if you will, has Nebraska firmly in the field at this point. We're really not even on the bubble. We're not one of those last four in, or even last four buys. We're solidly in the tournament, in the bracket. ESPN, Joe Lunardi has us as a 9 seed playing Mississippi State and Memphis. Jerry Palm, CBS, has us as a 10 seed, one of the top 10 seeds playing Nevada and Salt Lake City. A fun site that I like to look at is Bracket Matrix. So it brings all of the bracketologists that put out brackets and really compiles them into into one bracket or seeding, if you will. As of this morning, there was 112 brackets out there, I believe. We were in all 112 brackets. Some brackets had us as high as a 7 seed. I think that's a bit of a stretch. The lowest we were as like an 11. But most brackets have us in that 9 to 10 range. And then when you compile that all up, we were either, I think on Bracket Matrix this morning, we were like the last 9 seed. We've kind of bounced back and forth all week between that last 9 or that first 10 seed. So again, solidly in the tournament. Really at this point, Nebraska would have to play itself out of the tournament versus playing ourselves in. Obviously, it's very possible with the schedule we have left to play ourselves out, but don't expect that to happen with the with this team and just the overall maturity, if you will, of this team. And so, for those of you that have been following along the last several weeks, we've kind of broken down these last 7 games coming out of that Northwestern road loss several weeks ago. And what we were saying on this show several weeks ago, of these 7, which we should be favored in all. We weren't favored at Ohio State, but again, it was like 2.5, I think. But if we could go 5-2, we thought we would be in the tournament. 6-1 for sure, slam dunk in. 5-2, we should still be in. 4-3 is where we need to go to the Big Ten tournament and do some things. Well, as everybody knows, we won the first 4, lost to Ohio State, so we're sitting at 4-1 with 2 games left. And really, this is where we start to talk about, the potential for some bad losses, if you will. Not necessarily Q3 or Q4, although the Rutgers game could potentially be a Q3 loss. So this Sunday, tomorrow night, we've got Rutgers at home. They're 91st in the net, which would be a Q3 loss if it were to happen. I don't see under any way, shape, or form that we're losing to Rutgers at home, especially after what happened out at Rutgers last month. This is very similar to that Minnesota game. Revenge. It's senior night. PBA is going to be rocking. It has been rocking. It's been a very fun and cool environment to see. So we got Rutgers on Sunday. Then the boys get a week off. Next Sunday at Michigan. Michigan's 129 in the net, which is obviously not good, but the fact that it's a road game still doesn't make it a Q3 game. It's actually a Q2 opportunity, if you will. Now, Michigan is a different team at home versus on the road. Their best player, if you remember, is not playing on the road for academic reasons. He will be playing, or should be playing, on next Sunday. But Michigan has just been awful. They lost by 30 to Rutgers last weekend. They play Ohio State this weekend, who's on a bit of a roll, so I would anticipate that one to potentially get ugly. At this point, Michigan's looking to fold up shop and get to the offseason, and we'll see what happens with Juwan Howard. But circling back to what this means for Nebraska, we've got 2 extremely winnable games. I don't see us losing at home versus Rutgers. At Michigan, on the road, who knows? This team, as we know, have been, they play like a top 10 team at home. They play like a middle to bottom conference team on the road at times. But I would expect we're going to get at least one of those 2. So it's going to put us into that 5-2 range, where I've said for weeks now that gets us in the tournament. probably around that 10 or 11 seed. I want to see these guys, if you're a tournament team, if you're a special team that I think they are, and I know several of you think they are, they'll take care of business at home versus Rutgers. They'll take care of business next Sunday at a sleepy Michigan. A 6-1 finish, again, puts us solidly in the tournament. And something exciting here is so Wisconsin just lost to Illinois before taping here. That puts us up to the 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. There's obviously a lot of basketball that'll occur over the next week. We're kind of fighting for that top 4, which is a double bye with Northwestern, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Now Michigan State plays Purdue later today, so I think they're gonna fall there. But so if you can take care of business versus Rutgers at Michigan, not only are you in the tournament, you probably have a double bye, top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Then that provides you an opportunity for some more big wins, Q1, quad 2 wins. And then you start thinking about seeding. Can you avoid that 8-9 line? Can you get to a 7 seed potentially? I think 7's probably your ceiling. This might be a bit of a hot take or maybe differs from others. I'd rather be a 10 seed than an 8-9, right? If you're an 8-9, you're assuredly playing a 1 in the second round. If you're a 10, you get a chance to play that 2 line. If you start to look at the 1 versus 2, this is a very top-heavy bracket. You've got UConn, Purdue, obviously, Houston in that 1 line. I wouldn't want to play any of those. You're not going to pair up with Purdue, most likely being a conference opponent, but I don't want anything to do with UConn or anything to do with Houston necessarily. Maybe Arizona would be fine if they end up being that 4th number 1. I'd rather slide to that 2 line, get like an Iowa State, a Kansas, somebody in that type of space if we were to get through that first round and into the second round. Now, some of you are probably saying, we're talking crazy here. We haven't won a tournament game in our history, and now you're talking about winning 2. And I think this team is capable of, they're a very tough matchup for several of these teams when you've got the scoring you do on the perimeter, you've got the big men on the inside that can stretch and come out like a rink mass hitting the 3. They're a tough matchup, not to mention Tominaga, who's just a pest. They're a tough matchup for non-Big Ten teams who aren't used to defending this offense, and that doesn't account for the relentless defense that we've seen from this team as well. So yes, if it's up to me, give me a 10 over an 8-9, but let's play ourselves into a 7, where you got that same 10-7 matchup, but maybe you've got a lesser opponent in that first round, and then you get the 2 seed in the second round. And I do think a Sweet 16 run is plausible for this team. But obviously a lot of work to do before then. Let's take care of business tomorrow night at Rutgers. That'll finish off the home slate with just 1 loss. It'll be the highest winning percentage in most wins in school history at home. Then at Michigan, the dead last team in the Big Ten. Take care of business there. You don't want to lose to the 129th ranked team in the net going into the Big Ten tournament. Don't give the committee any reason at this point to leave you out, because right now they've got every reason to keep you in. So very exciting time for Nebraska basketball. We will be on the air probably Friday next week. We'll break down the Rutgers game. We'll start to look through the national picture once again, see where that sets everything, and then preview Michigan, and then where we sit from a Big Ten standing perspective as we approach the tournament. So exciting times for Fred Hoiberg, exciting times for Nebraska basketball. Well, with that, let's transition into some football. Nebraska football right now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're kind of in what I would classify the dog days of the offseason. I guess the best way to signify this is the biggest story of the week that I came across was really around NIL and a beef jerky controversy. Yes, you heard that right, a beef jerky controversy. So a little bit of history here, if for those that aren't aware. When NIL went into place 2-3 years ago, one of the first companies, if you will, or items that was established was pipeline jerky, which is jerky that you can go out and purchase, and the proceeds go to the offensive line. Well, this week, 1890, who's the main collective for Nebraska, introduced a new beef jerky product called Cornhead Beef Jerky. Well, this ruffled the feathers of some that have been a big proponent of pipeline jerky and asking the question, why are you trying to steal market share from pipeline jerky, et cetera, et cetera. End of the day, all of this money is good for Nebraska athletics. There's people that maybe don't like pipeline jerky that'll now purchase cornhead beef jerky. There's people that weren't even aware of pipeline jerky that hear about cornhead beef jerky because 1890 is so big and established that may now try pipeline jerky. This is a good thing for Nebraska athletics. This is not something to get worked up over. And so it's, I've kind of sat behind the scenes chuckling as I've seen, war of words go back and forth on social media. I think when it comes down to 1890 and the pipeline jerky, though, the leaderships of those two organizations, if you will, there's no problem with 1890 introducing cornhead beef jerky. And in fact, I think pipeline jerky will get a bump from this as well. But again, it was late February. It's obviously now March, but it was late February when this was kind of introduced and people were hearing about this for the first time. The fact is there's just, not a lot going on in Nebraska football at the moment. Winter conditioning is in full force. Mat drills are ongoing with the with the coaches, the 10 main on-field coaches leading those, with obviously the strength and conditioning staff. There's a lot of fun videos online from Husker football Twitter and others showing some of those workouts taking place. There's also a new video series that the Husker football program has filmed, produced, and now publishing, kind of a behind the scenes, if you will, of the off season. The first episode dropped last weekend, followed the Nash Hutmacher situation of him transitioning and competing on the wrestling mat. There was some really good footage, an interview with Ty Robinson and the why for him coming back. And so really encourage everybody to check that out. I think it's 45 minutes long or so, but really well done, really well produced. It starts with signing day and kind of moves forward through the off season. Shows you, again, some of the behind the scenes things that go on from a day-to-day perspective. So that's really all that we have for Nebraska football. We do have spring practice kicking off in about 3 weeks. The guys will get a week break here for spring break coming up. I think that's a week away, so they got one more week here of mat drills, winter conditioning. They'll go on spring break for a week. They come back. They have another week of strength and conditioning, kind of reacclimation, if you will, before then formal spring practices kick off. That'll go on, for 5 weeks, accumulating in the red-white spring game on April 27th, where we'll get our first kind of glimpse, introduction, if you will, to the 2024 squad, which will be really exciting. So again, kind of a short segment this week on Nebraska football, just part of how the calendar falls. We'll start to wrap up here in the next 3 or 4 weeks as we approach spring ball. Maybe start doing some breakdowns of position groups. And again, we'll start to get some more behind the scenes information as we transition into spring ball here in the coming week. So with that, let's get into some Nebraska baseball news. We did get more, I kind of call them data points, right? There's so many games in baseball. So with each game, you kind of take, little nuggets from each, start to form an opinion of what this team's going to look like. And so when we met last Saturday, Nebraska was in the midst of a 4-game series with Grand Canyon. They got the series open on Thursday, took the game on Friday. And to remind people, Grand Canyon was 4-0 coming into this 4-game series. So Saturday, and I also mentioned on this show last week that I came into this series hoping for 2-2. I wanted to get greedy at this point. We missed an opportunity the week prior, but I wanted to get greedy. Let's get one of these last 2 on Saturday, Sunday. They were able to do that, but it was a little bit scary. So Saturday, they got up 3-0 early. Not much went right from that point forward. Ended up losing 5-7. Come back to Sunday, which Will Bolt often refers to as Championship Sunday. They were able to secure the win 10-8. But it wasn't as easy as maybe the score would indicate. Nebraska was up 8-1 really early. Grand Canyon had several errors, missed fielding opportunities. Nebraska took advantage, went up 8-1 early. Then they gave up 7 unanswered runs, which accumulated with a grand slam there in the 5th inning, which allowed Grand Canyon to tie it up. Not much happened the next few innings, but then Nebraska in the 8th was able to manufacture 2 runs, one by a pass ball and another by stealing home. Bullpen came out. A couple guys got on both in the 8th and 9th, but were able to shut it down. So Nebraska was able to secure that additional win that I was talking about last week. And this is going to be, this 3-1 series victory is going to, might not look like much now, but it's going to be big when we get to start thinking about RPI in late May, early June, and thinking about postseason play. So I know Grand Canyon on the surface doesn't seem like a big name. They were 4-0 coming into this series. They're back-to-back conference champions. They're a mature team. They're going to be in the postseason mix down the road. To take 3 out of 4 in their ballpark is really big for Will Bolt's team. And so then we transition to this week, which was set up for another 4-game series on the road at the home in Charleston, South Carolina, a College of Charleston. College of Charleston coming into this series was off to a 7-0 start, but really hadn't played anybody. I think it was Marshall, Youngstown State. So kind of hard to understand or really surmise, I guess, the quality of the competition. Thursday night, though, it wasn't Thursday night, it was Thursday afternoon. Nebraska was down 5-1 going into the 9th. Really hadn't done anything offensively. It was pretty putrid overall. We're able to scrap out a few hits, a couple walks, a big hit by Silva, and we're able to tie it in the 9th. Perry came in, shut him down in the bottom of the 9th to go to extras. Again, able to manufacture a run in the 10th, hit a leadoff double, sacrificed a third. Fielder's choice gets the runner in, so we win, take that one 6-5. Friday, yesterday was actually canceled due to inclement weather, so this series was shortened from 4 games to 3 games. Nebraska, a couple of interesting things here behind the scenes. I don't know how much this gets out. Again, it's college baseball, but Nebraska attempted to move up the start time of the game on Friday to get this one in, knowing the forecast from 3 o'clock on. College of Charleston said no due to class schedules. Then Nebraska shifted, tried to get a doubleheader in for today on Saturday. Again, College of Charleston said no because they have a basketball game on campus. And so with that little nugget and a couple other things that are going on behind the scenes, I don't know if hit the news so much, so I'm not gonna get into it. I don't think we're gonna see Nebraska playing at College of Charleston anytime soon. Again, just some weird developments there. So as we turn the page, this has gone from a 4-game set to a 3-game set. Nebraska's got the first one. We'll play tonight at 5 o'clock. I assume Brett Sears will get the start tonight with yesterday's game being canceled. And then we'll go in and play Sunday. Will Walsh, I would imagine. It'll either be Will Walsh or Caleb Clark. I think it'll be Will Walsh starting on Sunday now, obviously instead of Saturday, and then Caleb Clark will be available for long relief if that's needed. Again, as we kind of break down the series, I was thinking 2-2 coming in. Really good quality competition again on the road. You get Thursday. With Friday being canceled, can we win the series now, right? So, get one of Saturday, Sunday. Feel really good about tonight with Brett Sears going. He's been incredibly impressive in his first 2 starts. Will Walsh has been a little bit more inconsistent, but he's got the stuff to also come out and provide a quality start on Sunday. So we'll continue to follow Will Bolt's crew and see if we can get one of these last 2. If we can come out of this with a 2-1 weekend, or heck, 3-0, right? Again, thinking long-term, RPI, those types of things, postseason play. Remember, last year conference play wasn't the problem for this team. It was non-conference midweek games, and then the RPI was in the hundreds when it came to selection time, and they just weren't even in the conversation. So these non-conference wins are incredibly important when we start to stack up and think about RPI and selection time coming up around Memorial Day. So we will continue to follow Will Bolt's squad. Again, a game tonight, and then a game tomorrow afternoon in Charleston. With that, let's transition into a couple of national storylines before we wrap up this week. We did talk about last week some changes coming to the college football playoff. We got more information on this this week. So just to recap, we talked last week. We do have an approved model now for the next 2 years, a 5+7 model. What that means, the top 5 conference champs will get an automatic bid. Top 4 conference champs get a first round bye. So this is no longer a Power 5 situation. It's a Power 4 situation with the Pac-12 going away. So your top 4, Power 5 conferences will get that automatic bid. And then really the top G5, Group of 5 conference will get an automatic bid. So that's where the 5 comes from. And then 7 selections, if you will, or at-large bids, with several of those coming from probably the SEC and the Big Ten, which gets you to the 12. Top 4 will get a first-round bye. First-round games will be played on on school campuses, which I think will be really cool. But again, I want to go back to the point I made last week is Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame's got an interesting piece in all of this because they are not eligible. Again, this is just the next 2 years, but they are not eligible for a first round bye in this model as they can't be a conference champ. While they play several ACC teams and they're in the ACC for other sports, they're a true independent in football. And so the best they can do is be one of those 7 at large, which again, even if they're number 1 in the country, the at-larges do not qualify for the top 4 spots. The top 4 spots, the top 4 spots are, they get first round byes, are by rules conference champions. So that's interesting. So this model is going to be in place for the next 2 years. But now here's where we got additional information this week. So the contract's up after 2025, and negotiations have been hot and heavy these last 2 weeks to set up what 2026 looks and beyond, because you've got to get that TV contract in place, which appears to, will continue to be ESPN. But they're looking, I think at this point you can pretty much lock it up that it's going to increase from 12 to 14 teams in 2026 and beyond. But here's where the jockeying behind the scenes is. The Big Ten and the SEC are really trying to push their weight around and secure as many automatic bids as possible to the 14-team playoff. Last week we talked, they were pushing for 4 automatic bids per conference, so 8 of the 14 spots. As you can imagine, the ACC, the Big 12, the Group of 5, everybody else has pushed back extensively on that. So this week, where this is going, or the current proposal on the table, I can't say whether this will happen or not, but where we're at in the negotiations is the Big Ten and the SEC are pushing for 3 automatic bids, but each of their conference champion would be given the first round bye. So under a 14-team model, you'll have 2 first round byes instead of the 4 under the 12 model. And the Big Ten and SEC are saying, fine, we won't take 4 automatic bids. We'll take 3 automatic bids, but give us guarantee that our conference champions get each of those automatic byes. So think about this from a Big 12 and ACC perspective. Maybe, let's say Florida State, right? And the ACC goes undefeated again. Very impressive. They're the number 1 team in the country. Big Ten, SEC beat each other up. They all got 1-2 losses. Florida State's the consensus number 1 team in the country. Wins their conference. They get the automatic bid from the ACC. But in the contract, the Big Ten and the SEC have negotiated. They automatically get the number 1 and number 2 seeds in a first round bye going in. So again, I can't say that I see this passing, but the fact that it's being reported on the national level indicates that it's definitely something that's being discussed. And I even saw one national writer say that this was pushed by the Big 12 and the ACC. The Big 12 and the ACC are saying, we're not going to give you 4, we'll give you 3, but to get you to say yes to the 3, we'll give you this. But then under the current model that they're discussing for the 14 teams, the way this would break down, this is interesting now, Big Ten and SEC would get 3 each, so that's 6, ACC and Big 12 would get 2 each, so that's 4 more. And so they would all get, so that'd be 10 of the 14 spots automatic bids, and the group of 5 would get an automatic bid to make 11. So you'd have 11 auto bids, 3 at-large bids, with the Big Ten and the SEC guaranteeing them spots in the first and second slot or first round buys. So that's where we sit this week. These negotiations are going to continue in the weeks to come. They have said they want to lock this contract up within the next 30 days or so. Obviously, there's a lot of jockeying for position, and you got the Big Ten, SEC pushing their weight. Another thing coming out of the Big Ten and the SEC is saying, why would we guarantee the ACC and the Big 12 2 spots each? Why would we guarantee the group of 5 a spot into this? So a lot going on behind the scenes. The negotiations are fascinating. Where this thing lays, I don't know. Where we end up, I don't know. But it's fun to follow in February, March in the off season. Obviously, the Big Ten and the SEC see and understand their power within college athletics and are certainly trying to use that to their advantage. So we'll continue to follow that. We could come back next week and it's a completely different model than what we just discussed and what we just walked through. The one thing that I think is almost assured, though, is this thing is going to go from 12 to 14 under the new contract. So fascinating stuff there with the college football playoff. And then the last national storyline, it appears a couple new rules are coming to college football, and I think I like all 3 of them. 2 for sure. Helmet communication is coming. So this will look very similar to what you see in the NFL, where the quarterback, the coaching staff has direct communication into the quarterback's helmet, and then one player on the defensive side will have, most likely it's generally like a middle linebacker, would have direct communication from the sideline in onto the field. And then you would also have the second rule that will almost assuredly pass is tablets will be allowed on the sideline and at halftime. So both of those rules are long overdue. You've got some of this technology being used at the high school and the prep level. Obviously, you've got it used in the NFL. College has been very slow to adapt, so I'm 100% in favor of those. That should have happened a long time ago. And then the last rule that maybe gives some pause, some pushback, is the introduction of the 2-minute warning. So just, exactly like the NFL, 2-minute warning in the first half, 2-minute warning in the second half gives the really the trailing team, if you will, an additional timeout. I don't know how I feel about that yet. On the surface, I think I like it. Wherever we can make the rules as consistent as possible between the 2 highest levels, I think that's a good thing. So I'm going to say for now, but give myself some more time to think about this, that I think it's a good addition to the game. 2-minute warning in the first half, even in the NFL, I kind of went back and forth on and said it's not needed. In the second half, though, I think it's a good addition to the game. Keeps things exciting, keeps things interesting all the way till the end. But I think all 3 of those are imminent. Helmet communication, tablets, technology on the sideline, and then the introduction of the 2-minute warning. So some interesting developments for college football, some good enhancements and advancements to the game overall, in my opinion. And I think there'll be more coming in the coming weeks, but those 3 are almost assuredly to get passed and become official here pretty quickly. So with that, we are going to wrap up this week's edition of Big Red Huddle. Appreciate you taking time to listen. Again, we are on Twitter at Big Red Huddle, or X, I guess now, as they're calling themselves. BigRedHuddle.com is the website. We're on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. Please take some time, provide a rating, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, provide us feedback, interact with us on Twitter, X. And with that, we will see you and we will huddle up again next week. Go Big Red.